you
It's
love
fine.
talking,
Just
but you don't have to, like, don't, like, yeah,
it's fine.
just
Talk.
get to the
Get
point.
it? No. Just talk. It's fine.
Yeah.
If it's,
And then you can
I can
always
cut it out. Yeah. Okay, fine. So
press record, no?
yeah. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Urvi Arnal, a self-taught baker who's been running Cake for Breakfast for the past 3 years. She's learned to bake a lot of different things, like literally a lot of different things, and has been taking orders all over Pune. And she also bakes a lot of cakes for the dogs. Wait, you'll see how happy the dogs are in a second. There you go, see? And in this podcast, she's going to talk about how she runs Cake for Breakfast.
Hi guys, my name is Urvi and I run a home bakery called Cake for Breakfast, which was originated 3 years ago now, back in 2021. It started off as a passion. It was a habit that was created in COVID. Uh, my birthday fell in the first ever lockdown announced in India, and I thought I needed cake, so decided to bake one myself. It was a very old oven. It almost took 2 hours to bake one carrot cake, which was still raw in the center. But that was when something clicked, and I just kept going back to that habit, never ever thinking that it's going to ever translate into a business and a full-time career for me. I had just graduated from college. I got placed at a financial services company. That's where I worked for a year. And it's that experience that I had in 1 year that actually led me to sort of do something of my own, And after COVID, we also saw a lot of people wanting to do something that they've been wanting to do, translating their passion into business. Um, Honestly, I was very, in that 1 year, I was very done with corporate. That was the first time where, when you work on the job, that's when you realize how something is. Earlier, I had taken finance in college. It's all good and it's all fancy. But then when you actually start working, you realize how it is, or whether that career is meant for you or not. Slowly, I started to think that it's not something I want to do. It's not something I see myself doing 5 years, 10 years down the line, and it's not going to give me like a satisfaction or a happiness. Started gravitating more towards baking. Never got time to do it, so felt like doing it more and more. Then finally, this idea hatched in my brain that I want to leave my job and give myself some time to see if I can do something in baking. And after 2-3 months of thinking, that's when I told my parents about it. And touch wood, my parents have always been very, very supportive. Of course, they had doubts in their mind. They wanted me to continue for another year, but I just felt like the more time I pushed the baking, it's just going to take an additional year for me to, actually get back, start. So took the leap, quit my job, and started doing it full time. And yeah, so that's where the Cake for Breakfast journey began. And it's been about 2.5 years now since I left my job, and I'm doing this full time.
So you were on a full track to enter, like, go into the finance domain.
Oh yes, yes.
So in college, did nothing related to baking or culinary.
Never. It all started in COVID. I had a very normal plan, like I think everyone else does. You work after your undergrad, then you go for your masters, you get placed, and that was I never even could think of doing something else. I don't come from a family background or business background at all. It's one of those things that would just never even cross your mind, because I mean, me doing a business, no, that doesn't, I just never thought it would happen. Now that I think about it, my dad has always loved cooking a lot, so I feel like I get it from there. And it just needed a time and place to emerge, like just to happen for me to realize. And I think that's how life works, and everything that happened has happened for the best.
COVID was like a good thing for you then.
Yes, it
You did pick
definitely
up then.
was. Yes.
So as a child, you never were interested
No,
in
my
baking or
mom
anything
has
like that?
always she has always been a very great baker. I remember all our beginning birthday years, me and my brother, she's always baked cake, she's always made desserts for parties at home. And then she also, she's a teacher, then she also sort of didn't get time for it after that. But that was the closest. I mean, I don't even remember going and helping my mom in the kitchen while she baked, so it's not something that yeah.
So you started it in COVID and then sort of picked it up from there, tried new recipes by
Yeah, so
yourself?
in COVID, I opened my Instagram page. I
Hmm.
named my Instagram page again just to have something separate, just where I could post my whatever I'm baking, recipes. It was off and on. It was never like I was not doing it like, oh, I have to post something. It was just there. And again, when I started doing my job, again, I would maybe post once a month, twice a month, because that's
Did you start this before your job, or was it just a white space where you started it?
the page I started maybe 5 to 6 months before my job. It
So
was
you were
just the during
out
the
of
COVID
college
time.
and then you started the
Yeah, out of
page.
college, maybe 6 to 7 months out of college, I started the page. And yeah, basically during COVID, I was still working from home. Offices were not open.
Yeah.
So I would obviously get a little bit more time since I was at home. So I opened the page thinking, okay, I'll still keep baking alongside. Then when I moved to Pune for my work in office, that's when I realized how hectic and how long the work hours are. And you just, don't get a lot of time. So that gravitated me more towards like, this is annoying. How can I not do something, like how can I not even get the time to bake a cake in a week? So that's how it started. And started obviously posting more on my Instagram page, and started positioning it as a business page after I left my job.
Okay.
Full time.
So was it always called Cake for Breakfast, or did you have a different name before?
No, it was actually always called Cake for Breakfast.
Why was it called Cake for Breakfast?
So I think I was trying to come up with a unique name for my page. And Cake for Breakfast, I don't know how, I genuinely don't remember how it happened, but it was just something like I've heard a lot of people say it's like a special moment, like, oh, I'm having cake for breakfast today. When it's your birthday, you have some leftover cake that you've cut at midnight, and the first thing that you eat in the morning is cake for breakfast. And people sort of think it's like, you're starting your day with
And
cake.
it's something that you're like happy about, and you tell people that I had
cake for breakfast. And I'd heard that term, being like passed around, or someone just saying it. So I think that stuck with me. Like, I think even one article had come about like, is cake for breakfast actually healthy or not healthy? So just that term. So people use it to, so I think that's how it happened. And when I went on Instagram to get that name, and there were already so many cake for breakfast, so I think that's the case with so many names now. So I just added another E in front of the cake, and that's how I got my page. And it went on to become, now it's like our brand identity, and I still find the name really lovely. Some people still take a little bit of time to, what does that even mean? Like, what do you mean cake for breakfast? I There are two ways to think about it. One is cake for breakfast, and one is like the first thing you want to eat is like cake from Cake for Breakfast, because it's that good. So,
and your logo is also as such, right? Like a cake and a sun kind of a thing. So it's like morning and cake.
Yes.
That's sweet. And then you moved to Pune, then you worked for a bit.
Yes.
Did you like your job?
I did not like it. um, okay, to be very honest, I had a great team. I worked in a okay company. But I just realized that the work that I'm doing is not for me. It was not such great quality work, and just something that I do not see myself doing a lot. But nonetheless, that definitely formed a base for whatever the future held for me. You learn to talk with people, you learn with, I learned the basics of Excel over there. And just like how you send emails, how you're maintaining that organization that you need to have. So I do not regret doing the job, because I think because of the job I am here today, because it it was like the light bulb moment for me that this is not something I want to do. And made some really really great friends. Experienced the office life as well, like going to office, having a team, attending meetings, doing Google Meets. So that was a journey, and I do miss that sometimes, but for now. But yeah, I made the bestest of friends who are still my friends today. So yes.
So were you still selling and baking cakes when you were working, or that was just still experimenting with recipes and stuff?
No, I would just again bake for bake for fun, bake for passion. I would take things to the office, or all of my friends, we would all live around here. So I made like a coffee cake one day, made a carrot cake the other day. So friends would come over and we would just, enjoy it together, and I would get feedback from them. But nothing about like selling or anything.
So selling is completely after you quit your job and then
Yes,
thought of
yes. It just
taking
never even occurred to me. I'm like, why would I sell? I'm like just making it for fun. So you feed it for fun, and um, yeah.
Do you remember the first reactions you got when you gave whatever you baked to your friends or people?
So honestly, I was not still that great at it. Then, like my cakes were not perfect. So most people did love it. Again, different things I made, people loved. But one time I made these blueberry muffins, which were not underbaked, but they were extremely like uh, they seemed underbaked. Okay, like they were baked from outside, but inside it you still had like that stickiness. So I remember one of my colleagues saying that it's a little bit sticky. So I got mixed reactions, but yeah, that time it was just everyone knew I'm just experimenting, and they also gave me their recommendations like, can you make this, can you make a cinnamon cake. So I remember trying like cinnamon muffins that time. And yeah, I think with each bake it got a little bit better. But it was all experimentation, all for fun.
So
When
you
I was
basically
alone.
kept at it, like you kept at your
Yes,
passion, just kept
yes,
baking
yes.
maybe every week.
So many weekends were working for me and for my team. So I would know like I have to work on either a Saturday or a Sunday, or maybe few hours on both days. So would just try to schedule my baking before or after that, like just do something, like go to the I'd actually carried my oven all the way from Jodhpur, where I was coming from. So I'd carried it because I knew that I'm going to continue to bake. So that oven was always there, and just that, okay, I want to bake now, I want to bake now. It was that little excitement that I had. So I would somehow try to get time. There were also times when I would bake in the night after coming back from office, just because I really wanted to. I felt like, so, and that was like a stress free activity for me. So yeah.
Do you remember the time that you thought, okay, I want to take this full time from now on? Or was it like a series of
Yeah,
events
it
that
was, I
happened?
think, a progression.
Hmm.
One time just a thought like, what if I leave my job and try doing something full time. And also that's what a lot of people were doing, their own thing. Like, you would see a lot of these, how even on Shark Tank India, people say like so many entrepreneurs are emerging from India, whether it's little things, small things, big things. So, and honestly, there was a point where I just wanted to get away from that corporate life.
Yeah.
Like anything to just leave. And because it had gotten to a point where I was waking up every day and just, when your day starts with something that you don't want to do, I was just always like in a complaining mood, like, why do I have to do this? Always hoping that we don't get any work, but that's never the case. So for a brief moment, I just knew I want to get away from it. And I felt like I had something to, and also my uh, like the I felt like baking was pulling me towards it. And slowly, I mean, I'm like, I think I can also do it. So now that that confidence was building up little by little, and it was all in my head. I had not told my parents, I had not told my friends or anybody, because I had to be sure of it myself. That, are you sure this is what you want to do? But one thing I was very sure of, I was like, there's nothing wrong with me taking a 1 year gap just for myself to figure it out. Like, I knew I wouldn't regret it. If it doesn't work out, I was happy to, like, come back to the corporate or whatever it is. But I wanted to give myself that chance, because I knew that if I don't, later I will, like, regret it. And slowly I decided to tell my parents, who, I mean, obviously they were not like shocked, but they were like, really, like, you want to do something of your own and you want to bake. They asked me to continue for another year, but I was like, see, if I continue, I'm just gonna keep pushing that dream that I have. So if you, it's better that you do it faster than a year later. So they were on board. I mean, what would they have, they were like, okay, great, take your time. I decided to leave, and I put in my papers. I remember going on the screen and putting your this thing, and all my friends were around me, and they were like, yay, because I think I was the first one to leave in the team. It was only been a year. So yeah, I remember that day, the day I resigned. And I was very excited to just get into baking and make something of my own.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, did you have a plan B when plan B was to get back to corporate if it doesn't work, give you a
Plan B was, yeah, it was. I
Hmm.
mean, I'm like, how hard can it be?
Hmm.
I was also studying for this exam called as CMA, which I cleared after I, got out of corporate. I took a month.
Hmm.
My second part was pending, so I gave that. So I felt like I had a buffer. I mean, I've done corporate. I've done 1 year of corporate. I have this exam in my hand.
Hmm.
Um, so I felt like it can't be that hard to get back into it if I have to. Of course, it's not going to be easy,
Hmm.
but yeah.
Hmm.
So there was really no plan B. I just in my head I thought, okay, it's not going to be that hard to get back into corporate.
And what was your plan A? How were you going to, like, you quit your job and then what was your next move that you did?
So luckily for me, the place that I stay in right now, it's like a big township. So it's not just a society with 4 to 5 towers. It's a whole township with a lot of towers. We have a whole business park over here with a lot of office going people. There's a lot of families, there's bachelors, there are a lot of schools and colleges around. So I felt like that I should start from here. I was starting from anywhere. I was starting from scratch. So it could have been Pune, it could have been Bangalore, but I just felt like this place is going to be a nice base for me. I'm already going to an office. I mean, I had an office, so I have people. There are some colleagues over there who can spread the word. Um, so I think that was a very good decision
So
for
you're
me.
considering this and Bangalore were the two places that you were
I mean,
thinking
Bangalore
about.
is where my parents, would probably live. Like that's where we have a house. So, but my parents didn't live in India at that point of time. So honestly, the only option was Pune. But I was very happy to live here and start my business here because I saw the market. I needed people to taste my product. I needed people to like tell me that okay, this is good, this is bad. You know, to start off from somewhere. So I think that was a very good decision that I stayed back because, as I said, a lot of offices, a lot of schools. Um, a lot of families, like a very well connected society in terms. So my plan was okay. So one thing I did not rush into was baking school. My dad suggested that I go to a baking school, get a professional degree
Like for your master's, something like that.
in baking,
In
like
baking.
in baking, like go to a baking school because that again is a whole different journey.
Right.
You get a professional degree, you get a qualification, you get internships, you get jobs from there. um, which was one angle I considered, but I think I was very clear in my head that I don't want to go to a baking school immediately because it's so new for me.
Yeah.
Like baking, I have done as a hobby. Doing this full time, I need to figure things out a little bit myself. And there's a lot of baking that you can learn by yourself with a lot of resources around you, no doubt. So I wanted to, at least do the basics myself. And when I'm ready for it, I was like, I'm happy to go to a baking school, which will elevate my skills that I need to get. And then I was happy to, maybe get an internship somewhere and all of that. But I never went to a baking school. I started my business on the side. I was experimenting, selling things, started to sell things. And as the time passed, the business was growing. Okay. And I did not now have the heart to leave it, go to a baking school, because it's not just you go for 6 months or 9 months. If you want to get the full benefit of a baking school, you want to do an internship, you want to get, do those. So I knew it would be maybe a year and a half that I get back to this. So I did not go to a baking school. Just about 5 to 6 months ago, I completed an online French pastry course, which enabled me to still be here for my business, grow my business, uh, increase my customers, and also elevate my skills. So I learned new things like macarons. I learned choux pastry. I did it from a mentor called as RJ, and I think we can link down the course in the whatever in the description box, because it was definitely helpful for me. It was the best that I could get even without going to a baking school. And honestly, right now there's so much debate that I keep seeing between, do you have to go to a baking school, is it okay if you don't go, because a lot of great bakers have never gone to baking school. So I wouldn't say that it's extremely critical that you have to go. It offers many things, but if you're not looking for, like, it's great for networking, you get to learn from a lot of great chefs, but I still feel like it's rushed in many ways. Like, so many people one week you're doing this, the next week you're doing that.
Yeah.
And baking is all about practice and patience.
Hmm.
So even if I come back from a baking school, doesn't mean my macaroons are going to be perfect, my eclairs are going to be like, no mistake at all. It's all about anyway practice. It's about how you perfect it in your own conditions, what your oven wants. So yeah, like you think about it. I also spoke to a lot of people who have gone to a baking school. How was their
Are there any
experience?
baking schools in India, or do people usually go outside?
No, there are definitely. In the past about 10 years, we have India. There's one called as Livon Academy,
Yeah.
which is the
Fabulous.
best in patisserie and baking in India. Then you have something called as SEP, which is School of European Pastry. And then you have something called as APCA. So you have a couple of things now. But I think if I wanted to go, I would have probably gone abroad. I would have gone. There's a college called as Le Cordon Bleu in Paris, in London, and again you have many of them. This is the popular one, but you have a lot of them in different. You have one in Barcelona. I'm forgetting the name of, and
How did you find the course that you did? Was it an online course, or was it like recorded videos, or something that he would teach hands-on?
So my mentor, her name was RJ. So she has actually worked as a head chef, head baker at cafes in Sydney, and she's also gone to a baking school. And her experience wasn't that great. So she started this mentorship program where you only have about 15 to 20 students in each batch, and they're all recorded lectures that you have to see. So every week is a different module. Like this week we're doing macaroons, this week we're doing cakes, for example. So you actually have to, at the end of the week, make that thing that she is teaching. Like I have to make those macaroons, and at the end of the week you get on a call with her for about a good like 1 to 2 hours where you troubleshoot your problems. So you have someone directly
to get
answering
feedback
your
from.
questions, even the tiniest ones, because internet and books will not answer all your baking questions. Like she helped me realize how my oven actually works, where my oven is giving off the heat, or where it has the fan settings on, which you wouldn't
Which you would like oversee as
oversee.
something.
Yeah, so she'll obviously give you feedback. She obviously cannot taste it, but the look, how my like the process went, how much did I whip my egg whites, how much did I not. So all those things, you take pictures and videos of the whole process, you send it to her, and she can really tell like you should have done this more of, you should have done this more of. You ask the littlest of questions. She helps you with like, because in India you have different brands, what works best for you. So I just felt it was very accountable. It was not like many organizations just give you a bulk recipe booklet and they're like, okay, now that's it. But recipes are not everything in baking. I recently heard a quote that said like, you might have a Michelin star recipe, but unless you have the Michelin star techniques, you won't be able to get the same result. So
And the course was for how long?
it was for 3 months. So 12 modules, like 12 weeks. So each module we did something different. We even learned croissants, we learned puff pastry, we learned a lot of these, fillings and glazes, and a lot of things that something that I always, I mean, her desserts, if you see her page, they're just very beautiful. So now I am confident that I can create something like that, because prior to the course I'm like, how do I, because it's not just one element, there are 5-6 elements going on in one dessert, and now I know that at least I can create something like that. So that was the course I did. Again, with a lot of, took some time to decide on what I want to do, compared a lot of other courses, and I just felt like this one is the closest to what I want to do, because you're very close relationship with the mentor. And now also, like now that the course is over, I can still ask her questions. I still send her my failures, like what could have gone wrong, and she helps me out. Yes.
And before this, it was totally on off YouTube and books that you've learned.
Yes, it was all self-taught. I have taken like small courses here and there, like maybe a basic sponge course where they teach you chocolate and vanilla, maybe a basic frosting course, little like those individual courses I've taken. Some of them have been great, some of them have just not worked for me. And again, it's not the recipe, I've developed it, I've done a lot of trials. Most of them I used to find it very sweet, so I would reduce the sugar, But again, in baking, sugar is not just for sweetness. You can't just reduce or eliminate the sugar. You won't get the same result. So again, a lot of trials. You see the consistency, you see the bake time, and finally get to a result that you're happy about, that you're going to eat a lot. So you're confident to pass on the same to your customers.
So develop recipes in the sense you pick up a new thing that you want to do and then make it for yourself a
Yeah,
couple
so
of
by
times.
developing recipes, it's not like from scratch I'm saying, okay, how much sugar. You take a base recipe, you take, like, suppose I've done a course. I take the chocolate sponge recipe that they have provided, I make it as it is, see what I like about it, see what I don't like about it. If I want it to be, so you start understanding things. You know that in an eggless cake, the yogurt that you're using is adding to the softness and is binding it together. So if you think that your cake is turning out dry, and if it's turning out hard, even though you've baked it, you've not over baked it, so you know you can maybe increase the yogurt a little bit. If you're finding it too sweet, obviously try to reduce the sugar by 10 to 20 to 30 grams. You can add a little bit more of cocoa powder. If you're not happy, if you're feeling like it's not chocolatey enough, maybe try using a different brand of cocoa powder. So all of those changes, that's what I mean when I'm saying developing and perfecting a recipe. Like, you have a base recipe, keep changing things. Maybe add a little bit less flour if you think it's too like cakey, if it's too, so all of that.
And are the ingredients easy to find in India? Whatever.
See, the most basic things are easily available. Like any general store, you'll get a Hershey cocoa powder, or you'll get this Wickfield ka cocoa powder. Maida is easily available. Whole wheat flour also, if you want to bake with, that's easily available. It's easily available. But the most important thing is the quality of the products that you're using. The more you spend on the ingredients, the more quality products you use, especially things like chocolate, which make a huge difference. They might be a little bit hard to source, but in a city like Pune, I've never faced an issue that it's just not available. You have different suppliers, and everything is now available online. Of course, online the prices will be a little steeper, but yeah.
So now you have specific vendors that you keep
Yes.
going back to
Yes.
get your
Yes.
ingredients.
So in the past 2 years that I've been doing this, of course, I've shifted suppliers. I've seen. I always compare my prices every time I'm restocking, so that I know that I'm getting the best price. For the last 1.5 years, there's been a global shortage of cocoa all over the world, because of which the pure chocolate prices have really, really risen. So, I mean, when I just got into baking, I would get a 1 kg block of dark chocolate for 500 rupees. And today the same price is between 1200 to 1500. Because
That's
of
like-
which, yeah, and I cannot.
You
So there
can't
are
do
two
away
types
with
of
it, yeah.
chocolate, okay? To be very brief, two types of chocolate. One is compound, one is couverture. Couverture is real chocolate.
Okay.
It's made with cocoa pods, the cocoa, it's the whole process. There's something called as compound chocolate, which does not have cocoa butter. It does not come from the cocoa bean. It does not have cocoa butter. It's made with artificial flavors. It has palm oil, and you can really feel the difference. Like, if I give you 2 blocks of chocolate, you'll be able to really tell the difference. You'll love the couverture one. You'll get the taste of chocolate. Here, I feel it has very synthetic taste. So no matter the price increase, I do not want to use that. Yeah, because now I feel like now people love my products because of that difference. It is expensive. Because you're using higher quality ingredients, obviously your final price of the product will also increase. But nowadays I feel people are much more conscious about the quality, and if you're getting better quality, you have to sort of pay for it. And people have seen the difference. Like, this one time I had a customer who said, oh my god, your half kg cake is almost the double of what I get. And she compared it with Monjani's. And I said, the product is also really different. And she luckily she bought that cake from me, and the very next day she came back to me and she told me that she really understood why it is different, and how it is different from all the cakes that you have been having. I think the Indian palate has developed over the years, because we have those same whipped cream cakes, so much
Now people
cream,
know a
less
lot
cake.
more about things.
So she could tell, like, I mean, she said, like, I know the difference. Like, this was hard to like stop eating at 1 or 2 bites. So I just knew that like I can never compromise on the quality, and that's the standard that I've set for the business and for myself. So, and I don't like eating the compound chocolate, so why would I serve something that I,
You don't
not,
like yourself.
yeah.
How, as a bakery, how often do you restock all your ingredients and?
I think it in the last 2 years it has always changed. It's never been. Earlier we used to buy, lesser things.
The other day I saw you had like
Yeah.
25 packets of maida on the, like, in front of the door.
Yeah. So I think so. See, luckily, Touchwood, our business is growing month on month. So now I think I've started to restock in big numbers, because firstly you save on time. In baking, you have not only one ingredient; there are like 10 ingredients that you need to stock up, from cocoa powder to your chocolates. Chocolates also, you have milk chocolate, dark chocolate, white chocolate. You have Nutella, you have Biscoff, you have cream cheese. So every time you run out of one thing, you have to go through that process all over again, where you're checking with the vendor if he has the supply. You're checking the prices again. So this time, what I'm started to do is, I think I'm gonna restock like once in 4 months. Everything you're buying in bulk. Okay, and of course, when you buy in bulk, you get the best prices. You're still paying the same for delivery. Um, so now I think have started to restock like 40 kgs of chocolate.
40 kgs.
40 kgs. Yeah, the last
And
batch
that
that
also
I did
ensures
was.
that even if the price goes up later
Yeah,
on, you
it's not
still
going to
have it.
affect me,
Yeah.
because that's what I was told by the shop owner, that the price again might increase. So I said, like, I was actually finding the best price. Like the previous batch was more expensive than that time, the price that was available at. So I just went for it. I said 40 kgs of chocolate. We got a lot of cream cheese. I got like 10 to 20 jars of Nutella, 10 to 20 jars of Biscoff, and lot of sugar. I got like 50 kgs of sugar.
Why do you keep all this in your house?
It's like my entire 3 BHK house is like a bakery right now. One whole room is full packaging. Like you open cupboards expecting to maybe find clothes and everything. You'll see chocolate, chocolate, chocolate. You'll see a lot of sugar. Honestly, wherever there's space, I just uh, made
And
my.
what about the things that need cold storage? How did you?
So
how do you store that?
we started. So when I left my job, I was staying in a rented apartment. I still stay in a rented apartment. That rented house came with a little fridge. And 3-4 months into baking full time, I realized that this little fridge is not going to be enough. I was sharing my flat with 2 other flatmates, so there was food, and there were times where I had to remove things and put my cake inside. So that's when I decided to. So 4-5 months into the uh, business, I got a second fridge, and so now we had 2 fridges. And a year into the business, I got another fridge, which was a proper commercial big fridge. So currently I have 3 fridges at home, and 2 main ones are the two big ones that I use for baking. So now there's luckily enough space for storage. But now next thing I need to buy is a deep freezer, because a lot of things like whipping cream and everything that you buy need to be stored in a freezer. So right now I just have a little fridge freezer, because of which I can only get 5 to 6 liters of whipping cream at a time. But yeah, I
How
think
much
baking,
does the big fridge cost for you to?
it costed me. So I got the medium sized one. There's a one bigger than that. There's one smaller than that. So I got it for around 38,000.
Like 38,000.
38,000.
And the other all equipments, like your ovens and your other fridge and.
So the first oven I got was, I think, around 7 to 8,000 rupees. The again, home ovens. They're not the commercial ovens yet. The next big investment that I will have to make are the commercial ovens, where you can have a lot of trays going in at once. Right now I just can put one tray in the middle. So I have 2 ovens. Both of them are small ovens, one tray at a time. Both of them costed me approximately around 7. The second one that I got was a second-hand oven, which was still in a very, very good condition. So I got it for maybe 8 to 9,000. The one that I purchased was also around 7,000. So I have 2 ovens, 3 fridges, and I have one stand mixer. And this is all my this thing from home. So yeah, and I have one stand mixer which costed me around, I think, 11 to 12,000.
That thing that just keeps going around.
Yeah,
Like this.
like it helps with your dough. It helps with like cake batters, if you're multiplying your recipe by like 3 to 4 times, if you're making a big batch. So yes.
To the business aspect.
Yes.
This is something that I'm personally very interested in. So how do you, like, if I'm starting a bakery right now, How do I get my first customer?
Yeah. Okay, so I think for any business, whether you're a baking business, you're an artist, you're a crochet, crochet artist or painter, or anything, you're making some other food from home, or you're making masalas, or you're making flowers. Um, you have to start anywhere. Okay, I would also ask myself this question way before I even got into baking, like how do you start, like
Correct.
how do you actually start the business?
Mm.
And when you start doing it, I'm going to try and break it down to you in very simple steps. Start with your friends, start with your family. Now this is just okay, the testing and part, obviously your friends and family. Now let's, if you're talking about the customer, I'm sure you live in an apartment, or you live in a society, or you live where there are people around you. I was lucky in a way that our society is very well connected through like WhatsApp groups,
yeah.
and even the society app. So my first ever experience with customers was when I made like these Korean buns at home. I had tried it for the first time at a cafe in Mumbai. I decided to recreate it at home, and just out of nowhere I decided to upload, like, I'm selling these. Like, I think that was my first ever time I was selling something like officially. I put it on the society app. Literally was just sitting in my bed or sitting on the table, just decided to go for it, not expecting much. And that weekend was like, I still remember it because so many orders came in. Like, we had about 17 to 18 people in that. At that time, this was a huge number for me, when I was maybe expecting like to make 4 or 5 of those Korean buns. And since it was the first time, I had even mentioned that I'll deliver it also myself. And that Saturday, I remember, like, I was up since morning and I had not had a sip of water till even evening, because it was like, you're making it, because now I've taken it upon myself that I will also deliver it.
Correct.
So I'm running around delivering it, coming back, making it. And Korean buns is like, I wanted to give it fresh. So if the customer is saying I'm coming in 15 minutes, that's when I'm preparing the order. I run out of buns in the middle. I'm rushing to the market myself, like the shop myself, getting more buns. So that is how it started for me. That is how those 18 people realized, okay, this is Urvi, she bakes. Maybe out of those 18 people, even 4 people will tell someone that, oh, I ordered these buns from this girl, you should try it. So if you do not have such a society app, you might have some WhatsApp group. Try to go talk to the management of this thing. If you can put up a little, like, a lot of these have these notice boards that you can put up something. Tell your friends. You can go give your neighbor a sample, like, try a cupcake. Just ring the bell, like, hey, I've made this, you can try it. Maybe that neighbor, if the neighbor likes it, will tell one other person in the society. So it just happens, it just starts.
So basically, just reach out.
Just reach out.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're ask around, if there's any WhatsApp group, you might not know. I was not aware of any WhatsApp groups until I started doing my business. Okay, and then I found out, okay, there's one group where you have all like the ladies of like this society. So I got onto that group, I uploaded something, hey, today we've made cupcakes. Okay, you may get orders, you may not get orders, that's totally fine. If you haven't gotten any orders, maybe say that you're selling at a discounted price, or even give away samples. Say that buy one, I'll give you one, like, for free. In the beginning, it's just about pushing your product so that people try it and give you honest feedback. And you can very happily mention in your message that I'm open to feedback, selling at an extremely discounted price. Make sure you're covering your costs for your packaging, for your ingredients, because you're not charging for your efforts at that point.
Correct.
And I was okay to do that in the beginning. So that's how it started.
What were the first things that you were selling out here in your society?
I think it was cupcakes and tea cakes is what I started with. So I would make like banana cake, or I would make like an orange or a lemon cake that I would cut slices off. Like, just make one loaf. Like, I still remember, like, those times you make just one loaf and you cut it and you go like, oh god, 8 slices, like, it got sold out. It was a big thing. You make like a batch of cupcakes, maybe you have 12 cupcakes. I made plain chocolate, plain vanilla, started, so I think those are the main things that I made. I used to take orders for cakes, but again, getting a clean finish on a cake, being able to aesthetically decorate cakes, it takes a lot of time. So now that I look back on the cakes that I sold earlier, I know the flavor was really good, but the looks could have been much better. But
Yeah.
again, it's growth. You won't even realize that you're getting better at it, but you do get better. So I think this question of how to get your first customer is like just uh, go out there. You have these little society may you have these little stalls
I
like
was going to
Diwali
ask you.
pe.
You put up a lot of stalls in
Yes,
your
yes,
when
in
you were
my
starting out.
in my society. So you had just kids coming, you had families coming from your society. That's again a great way of people knowing. They get to taste. I would maybe have cupcakes again.
And then most importantly, also talk to you about see your face,
yeah,
actually relate to what is
relate
going
to
on.
like be able to picture like have an image with the bakery. And then people will try something, and then some people will specifically like one thing, and those people will keep ordering just that.
Yeah.
Like I have some people who will just always order the banana muffins because that's something that they love.
Correct.
And I think that's how it started. Diwali pe chota sa ek stall laga diya. You have limited things and people would buy it. Most of the times it would go, everything would sell out because I was doing it all by myself. It was not like I was able to bake a lot of things also. So stalls, society stalls, more people will like reach out to you. And if your product is good, see, the most time you have to spend on getting your product right, because people like something, they will come back to you.
And you have to make it like the same way again.
You have to make it like that. You have to standardize things. You have to, if you're using good quality products, that's definitely going to show in the end result as well. It should be something that you love eating. Like I remember now, I'm obviously quite bored of a lot of things that I make because I've eaten it enough. I'm done with it. But I remember like I would just the chocolate cake scraps with the chocolate ganache. I would eat quite a lot of it like in the beginning. I was like, it's so good. So just knowing that your product is good, and give out your numbers, make a very basic business card. I went on Canva. I'd never used Canva before ever. It cannot be that hard. Like right now we're all using our phone so much. It's not that hard. I would just made a little logo by myself on Canva, just got my number down just so that people should have your number. And Cake for Breakfast was my Instagram page, so that's what I wrote over there. Handed out my business cards.
And you grow your Instagram quite a lot, right?
Yeah, I think
Post very often, keep it engaged.
Yeah. So when when I left my job, I wanted to focus on my Instagram because I understood that it is important, especially in an area of baking and food where people eat with their eyes first, and then I knew it was very important for every business now to have a social media. It doesn't matter if you're good at it or not. It's a skill that you have to garner. You have to have that skill. But again, doing everything by myself, even though I wanted to give it time, I was not able to. Imagine like shooting by yourself, having different angles, setting up everything, going again, checking if you're making something. And then you have so much content, you have to edit it. It takes a lot of time. And when you have orders going on, you're obviously making the orders first. That's your first priority. And last year is when I knew that Instagram has to be taken more seriously than I already am. Instagram loves consistency, and doing everything by myself, it was hard to get that consistency. So I was just able to post maybe once a week, two times a week, which was not honestly enough. And that's when we also had Anita Didi, who was there to help me. I was initially editing all my videos, but it's now been about 4 to 5 months that we have hired a video editor, like a video editor. I shoot all the content, I plan all the content, I know what I want my page to have, but there's someone editing for me.
Did you see your engagement and followers rise up the more you started posting?
Yes, definitely. Like the first month that I posted consistently,
like every day, you mean?
I posted 20 videos in a month. That is 5 times a week. Okay. And immediately I saw like my followers were increased by 100 to 150. Now that's not a big number, but for someone whose growth had been stagnant for like 6 months, I had like 5 followers up, 10 followers up, then 2 followers down. So just it was always on that like 600, 700 mark. But seeing in that 1 month ki 150 followers hamare बढ़ गए हैं, I knew ki it is important. The consistency is important. And again, social media is also a skill. Like there's so much that you learn about it as you get into it. It's not just posting. You can't just upload a video. That's what I was doing for the longest time. Like I knew what the audience wanted to see, but I knew that I'm not a content creator. I'm a baker at the end of the day. So there's not a lot of content that I can put out just for the sake of like content. Most of the things that I was shooting was what my orders were, what I was actually doing in the day. But slowly you start understanding, like one video of mine did really well, so I just analyzed that video. Like I realized that that video is giving something to the customers.
What was that video?
I think so the first video was this baking supply haul video that I did, where I basically show everything that I've bought. Now I knew it was a fun video, I knew it would do well, but I didn't think it would do this well. Now what happened was a lot of people were messaging me like, where do you supply from?
Yeah,
Where do you source from? Where do you get your chocolates from? So they were getting something out of my reel. So I made a whole link, I made a whole like a message with all the separate phone numbers and links, and where in Pune am I getting all this. So many people messaged me. I think around 50 to 60 people might have messaged me. I've never had those many requests, those many comments. So I knew that, okay, I'm helping people in some way, right? So I know that I should follow that pattern for at least not all the videos, some videos. So then another video I did was everything you should take at your stall. So by this time I had done a couple of stalls where I felt, okay, I can help other people out. So I made like a checklist of this is everything you should carry at your stall. Again, a lot of engagement on that reel. People were saving it because it was like a checklist. So every time they're setting up a pop-up, they know they have to take this. A lot of people were asking me, where do you get this from? Where do you get that from? How do you display everything? What do you do with the leftovers? So all these questions relating to the stall were coming up. So now I know what kind of content will do well. I may not always be able to post it, and that's okay. Like that's okay. But as and when I can, I should. And today we've hit 5,000 followers, which I've had my page for about 3 years, and the maximum growth has happened in the last 6 years. Otherwise, it was always like
I remember it was at the 3,000 mark for a long time.
for a long time.
Yeah, I remember that because I used to keep seeing, is it like, and I always wanted to push it. And I always remember that Urvi, since the beginning of time, all her pictures, the whole Instagram is very aesthetic and very planned out. It was never random that you take a random picture and just put it up. Always had a theme running. Like it's very cohesive. It doesn't look like a home bakery at all from any angle. You should see it. It's very like neat, organized.
And I think I never thought I had it in me to even be slightly like creative or be aesthetic in any way. I think that's something that comes very naturally to people, and different people have different aesthetics.
Right.
I generally never thought I'd again like be good at it, ever want to have like I was always very camera shy. Still am, but I'm doing much better than
You're
what I
doing
was.
so well right now.
Earlier, my Instagram page was just food, like
Correct.
food. A lot of people told me, come on, like start showing your face. You need to build something personal also with the customers, with the audience.
Correct.
And I knew that would work. But it took me a lot of time to come out of that shell. Okay, slowly I would put in one shot in the entire video of my face, just baking. And again, you get comfortable with something when you start doing it. Like there's no other way around it. Like earlier it took me some time to get out of my shell, to show my face. It was first one shot, then it was more shots, then it was me talking to the camera, which I never thought I would do. Like, hey guys, today we're doing this. Slowly it happens. Then I also went on to make like these funny reels with my face on it, with a little bit of acting, and those reels did so well. So
the mainstream reels were a big hit.
So I mean, I knew, theek hai, anything for your business, like just do it. You've learned editing, you've learned planning, you've learned to maintain everything on your Excel, you've learned how to tag, toggle like the whole social media, you've learned to bake so much, you've learned how to present your cake so much. So it's all a part of it, and
You
just
have
get
to
out
stick
there.
with it and keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't, I mean, I don't think that you have to show your face for your Instagram to be successful. There are so many people who have so many millions of followers and they do not show their face. It's just something I wanted to do, but I was scared to do. So I'm happy that at least today I'm not that scared. I'm not at all worried about what people will have to say. Nobody has the time to judge you. You think that people are, you know, they're judging you. They're just like literally scrolling one reel after the other. No one cares. No one cares how you're looking in front of the camera. Most of my videos I don't even apply makeup because that's how naturally I am. Like I don't don't dress up a lot. I want it to be raw. I want it to like show people how it actually is. So it starts getting fun, like eventually.
And with what do you shoot your videos? And
I use my iPhone. I have an iPhone 13. I had an iPhone 11 before that. So I just use my phone. I try to, you know, again, change angles as and when I'm baking, try to get some good shots. Again, and a lot of other videos that are out there on Instagram inspire me. You see a very nice video, like, okay, this is something I can recreate. So, yeah, you get to recreate a lot. And now that we have an editor, I feel like thank God I don't have to do that whole editing and everything myself. And of course, like the editor also brings his own editing skills to the game. Yeah, you know, nowadays you have like fun fonts on Instagram going on. You have these sounds that are there. So yeah.
How did you find your editor?
So we actually have changed editors quite a bit. So the first editor we have was, okay, so before I talk about the editor, the first ever
That interview
team,
type of thing.
the first ever sort of team we worked with were two of our like friends. Friends, I wouldn't I mean friends, they were batchmates in my in college. So one of them was my batchmate and one of them was my senior. Both of them sort of started their own agency, like advertising agency. They were also starting out. Somehow we reached out to them or they reached out to us. We just started talking and they wanted to do something with us. So they were also very new, so they also wanted someone, you know, to like work with, where they can also show their skills. So they actually helped us with our whole rebranding. That is when my little Canva logo got a little makeover and got something that was original to me. Like you will not find our logo anywhere else, but you will find like the Canva logos and everything on a lot of people's pages. So they really helped us a lot. We knew we wanted something breakfast. We knew we wanted the sun, like just to show that it's breakfast. So they helped us fully rebrand. They helped us to create our new business cards, which again, not the Canva ones. Like they recreated that for us, and they helped us create a little video, like a
Like a
brand
montage of
video. Where it had been 1 year that I had been doing it. So they had come from Mumbai and Goa with all their professional equipment. I had written the whole script of how it's going to be. It was just a little thing of to give a little representation and identity to our little brand that we have going on over here. So that was very fun. So that was like the first team we worked with, and it was really fun to collaborate. And you know, that's when you understand the importance of having a team and growing a team, collaborating with other people who are so good at what they do and how they can help your business. So one of the team members from that team, Yatharth, so he edited our first videos for the first 2 months for us. And he was still working a full-time job, and then he left and he had his own plans. So we got some other two guys on board. These were like these college people who were also having their own streetwear clothing brand. That didn't really work well with us. Like we were not really getting what we wanted from them. Like sometimes you need a little bit of collaborativeness and not just someone doing it for the heck of it.
Yeah, you have to have the same thought process.
And wanting to at least partially do good for that business. You can't just be like, it's not a checklist. Okay, I have to edit one video, I'm done here. You have to use your own creativity a little bit. You have to use you're the editor. So in that, with those people, I just felt like it was a little too much of like me having to give them everything.
Yeah.
like do this, do this, do this.
Mm.
So I was still equally as involved, which I didn't want to be, because I might as well then edit the video myself. And we let go of them. And again, I reached out to like Yatharth, and I asked him to spread the word, because he is a video editor.
Right.
Like he worked a full-time job where he would edit like some really cool videos for other brands. So I knew he would have like a circle. And he recommended me someone, and the one we work with right now, we couldn't have asked for a better video editor. He's still in school, but he's so good at what he does. He totally understands the aesthetics of our page. He understands what's trending. He understands like what I want to put out there
And he's still
as
in
a brand.
school.
And he's so great. He's just so collaborative. He's so creative. He's always like on the same page. Any last minute changes, he's like more than happy to do it. So it feels like, you know, we're very, very happy to have him. And we actually gifted him a little something, because we reached 5K followers. And since the time he has joined us, we gained like 1,000 followers in 2 months, which has never happened. And I'm so thankful to him. So again, like he's also very happy to be working with us. And so that's how we got a video editor. Again, how you can do it, like on Facebook, you have so many of these like pages where people are freelancing. You have so many of these websites where you'll find freelancers. So whoever to fit your budget. Like my budget wasn't high. Like there are video editors who even want like 20,000 for a video, and there are some who are starting out and who are okay that you pay them a little bit less. So again, like put it on your Instagram stories, ask your friends to put it on their Instagram stories. A lot of people are good at that skill, even though they're not monetizing it. So sometimes you can take help from those people also, like who love video editing. Maybe they've never monetized it before, but you can be your first, like you can, you know, make them your first, you can be their first client and say that, hey, I'm ready to pay you this much. If you like their video editing, see their work, see how you like the person, see if you can work with the person. And that's how we got them on board. And yeah, a lot of these questions that I myself had before starting a business, like how do you get it?
Yeah.
Like how do you get this person? How do you get her? Like how did I get Anita Didi? Because again, like WhatsApp groups, I literally have a database of all like maids that I called up, and we still have it. And उनमें हमने उसमें लिखा हुआ है, like she was free, she was not free.
Was she a cook before she joined you?
No, she was not my cook or anything. We actually had a Didi who had come in. I had explained to her that, you know, this is like a proper employee work. You cannot just leave me in the middle. Like, I need your commitment. Please only work with me if you are able to work for a long time, because I'm going to be teaching you a lot of things. I'm going to be spending my energy, my time. So you cannot just leave me. But that maid ended up leaving in 1 week. She had 2 small kids. But I think, again, everything works out for the best.
Correct.
Like, she had 2 small kids. So sometimes my work is like you stretch longer. Or if you have a stall in the evening, like I will need that help. So I don't think that the first maid would be able to give that much time and commitment to me, because she had 2 small kids. So she left, and I was like very furious. I was like, I told you this is important. Like I've taught you so many things. Like whatever money I have to pay you, for me it's like a wastage, because I am not getting anything out of it. So she ended up getting this Didi for me. They're related, like somehow they're related. And so now she's been working with me full time, and she's just great. Like Anita Didi, she is I never have to she never makes me feel like guilty of like giving her some extra work, because I always compensate. If like one day stretches till like 6:30, the other day if it's early, I let her go early. You know, my stall timings are sometimes from like 6 to 10. So she's working with me till 4. She'll go quickly 1 hour, and she'll come back, and she'll stay with me at the stall till 8, and she'll never complain. Like I feel like she's there with me in the business, and she wants to grow it with me.
you. Yeah.
So she's not just, so I also now don't feel guilty, यार दीदी का 7 घंटे खत्म हो गया, अब मैं क्या करूं? Like I know I have her to fall back on. And you don't find the most perfect people just in the first go, you know. And of course, when I'm growing my team, I don't expect the girl who joins me will be with me forever. So you have to keep training people again, keep retraining. Someone will go, someone will make an excuse. You just have to. That's how I think businesses work. Nothing goes
And you
smoothly.
completely trained Anita Didi from scratch, basically.
Yeah. I mean, she obviously knows how to cook, but she has never obviously baked anything in her life before. Now she's at that level where like she'll be able to tell if the cake is baked or not, if it's done or not, even those little instinct things that you need to have in baking. you know, if the batter, sometimes you might accidentally add something more of or less of, and you realize like something's not right, so she'll be able to gauge that. Like if it's a chocolate cake recipe that you make every day, you know how the consistency is supposed to be. So if on so and so day it's not like that, she'll know. She'll let me know that I think something's gone wrong here. And you know, so apart from like finally decorating and frosting cakes, I would say she knows everything.
So she does the base work and then you
Base,
do
like
all the.
she bakes the cake sponges for me. She'll cut it for me. She'll make the layers. She knows how to make all the frostings, like whether it's a ganache, it's a white chocolate mousse, a dark chocolate mousse, buttercream, everything she knows. So all I have to do is go and, you know, like
Finish it
frost
off.
it,
Yeah.
decorate it, decorate the tarts or decorate the cupcakes, but she'll know everything. So I want to teach her that as well, so that that's also something that she can handle. And but yeah, most things she knows. So even when I'm sick or if I'm out of town, some orders keep going on, thankfully, to her, because you know, she can bake. Like if there's muffins or Korean buns, plain tea cakes, tarts, brownies, she can do it all.
हेलो
So अनीता दीदी आपको कैसा लगता है, मतलब उर्वी के साथ काम करते हुए
अच्छा लगता है दीदी
आपको बेकिंग पसंद है?
हाँ पसंद है
आपने क्या क्या नया सीखा baking में?
मतलब आप पहली बार केक्स वगैरह कुछ बिल्कुल
केक।
अलग काम कर रहे हो।
हाँ अलग तो काम कर रहे हो भी बनाने में तो अच्छा लगता है मेरे को
सबसे अच्छा क्या लगता है, मतलब पूरे बेकिंग में हम इतना केक बनाते हैं, पैकिंग करते हैं, कस्टमर को देते हैं, स्टॉल लगाते हैं, तो आपका सबसे उसमें फेवरेट काम या आपको जो पसंद क्या है करना?
करना मेरे को ज्यादा तो उसमें अपना चीज केक पसंद पड़ता बना
Cheesecake बनाना।
हाँ
चीज केक बनाना पसंद। एंड मतलब अभी आप जो भी पहले आपने इससे पहले जो भी काम किया है और जो आप अभी कर रहे हो, उसमें आपको क्या अपने आप के लिए क्या अच्छा लगता है, मतलब क्या अलग लगता है कि आप कुछ अभी आप यही करना चाहोगे या फिर आप जो पहले काम करते थे वो करना चाहोगे?
नहीं दीदी अब यही काम करना
यही काम।
यही अच्छा लगता है ना
हाँ, इसमें ऐसा लगता है ना, कुछ अपने लिए अपना
हाँ
कुछ हम लोग
बना
बना रहे हैं,
रहे
अपना कुछ कर रहे हैं।
सीख रहे भी
हाँ, and she's a very quick learner, so and I can now trust her quite a bit with, because I think I would have trust issues delegating because I do like perfectionism, but she really does help us a lot. When I'm sick, I'm now able to do many other things that I wasn't earlier able to because I had to do everything myself. So that way she's like a big help.
और अनीता दीदी आप घर पे बेकिंग करते हो?
नहीं
नहीं, सिर्फ घर।
इधर घर पे नहीं करते घर पे सामान में होना चाहिए ना करने के लिए
थैंक यू दीदी।
Thank you.
वेलकम
I've also seen you build a community of bakers slowly on Instagram. Like you've done a collaboration with other bakers a couple
Yeah.
of times.
Yeah.
So would you say that now you have like a community of bakers that you know in and around Pune?
Honestly, not a lot in Pune.
Hmm.
But I have definitely made like even some friends like in different parts of the country. And we talk to each other. I mean, mostly about baking, like help each other out.
Yeah.
Like if bombolinis are something that I make really well, so like yeah, the people will ask me about that. And if you know they're doing cookies and brownies really well, you ask them about that. I would not say in Pune. Maybe there's still like maybe over time it will happen. Of course, I know I've not like built personal connections with a lot of bakers in Pune. Like I follow their page and I know they exist. But yeah, and again, Instagram, through social media, you know, when I used to look at social media and I used to see people, wow, they're like collaborating with brands, like it's such a big thing. Like you also have to understand, like there are businesses at all levels and there are creators at all levels. So when I did my first ever, you can say, brand collaboration, it was all barter. It was like with this Jaggery company. They were also a very small business. So that's how they reached out to me. Like I am not going to get like big brands immediately. But again, that's all like a learning phase for you. Work with that small brand. I use their Jaggery to make maybe like some orange pound cake. And that's how it happened. Then I did another one with like some packaging company where they sent me some packaging. So all these little things that you've seen other people doing, and you're like, oh wow, like she has collaborations, she has brands, and slowly it will start happening with you if you're consistent, if you're maintaining. Again, a great following is not always necessary, but the quality of what you're posting is important, I feel. And so yeah, I've done a couple of brand collaborations. Now I do it very very less, and especially I say no to barter. Initially I would do barter collaborations, but now it does take a lot of time to like make something, shoot it, edit it, so I don't think it's worth it to do at a barter price. But yeah, it's all a part of, I mean, I think brand collaborations are a great source of income for any business. Like you need to sell also, and if you're getting revenue through another stream, like why not? But maintain your ethics. If you are very sure of something, if there's like, don't do something that is
Just
not
for
a
the
part.
sake of
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
don't
yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah. Like if I'm saying I'm not going to use compound, like just for a brand collaboration, I won't use a compound
Correct.
chocolate.
Yeah.
That I'm very this thing about. And yeah, I mean, Instagram, it's now getting more fun. But many times it also feels like, oh my god, like I have to post now, I have to do this. But just think of it like you're doing it for your business. So just yes.
And how do you curate your menus that you put out there? And do you keep adding new stuff according to the season or according to the times of the year?
Yeah, so with baking, I mean, it's like one thing is starting, one thing gets over also. It's like strawberry season start hua, khatam ho raha hai. You say bye bye to strawberries, but then you say hi to like mangoes.
Yeah.
So and then festivals keep going on. Like Diwali ke baad Christmas aa jata hai, Christmas ke baad New Year's aa jata hai. So you have something or the other going on. Last year actually I started to do this monthly menu where I thought every month I'll change the menu. But that didn't really work out for me in terms of like a month is too short to change the entire menu. So now I keep one standard menu which is very diversified. Diversified, I mean, it is a little bit diversified. So a lot of people in the beginning told me to keep it very small and
Like just
have a
cakes
niche.
or
Have a niche, which I totally agreed to, but I always wanted to offer just more than one thing. Like, there's a lot of businesses that just do bombolinis, and it's working out great for them. And bombolinis are my like top seller, and I can make a whole business out of it. But it's me. I just wanna not just do that. I wanna offer more things. So obviously in the beginning it gets a little bit difficult when you have so many things on the menu and people can order anything. So, but I don't know, I have somehow managed to maneuver through that. That like the base is the same for a lot of things. But you have uh, yeah, so I have some top sellers. So now I have a standard menu, and like now I have a strawberry menu which have like about 10 to 12 things just related to strawberry. So you have cakes, cupcakes, you have these tarts, so everything related to strawberry. And now when the mango season starts, I'm gonna make a new mango menu with all like the mango favorites, and then you have some standard things that are always happening in the background. So that's how I come up with my menu. Like now oranges are in season, so now I like recently tried these orange cupcakes. You make like an orange curd. Oh yeah, we have some orange cupcakes right here. So I sold them, people loved them. So now I'm like, okay, this has to go on the menu. Like the chocolate and orange combination is so great anyway, and it's worked out perfectly in this cupcake form, and I know it will in a cake form as well. So that's how I do it. And sometimes you see other people's Instagram or some other bakery doing some really cool things. You try to see like, oh hey, there's something I can do as well. And you have a lot of these trending things going on overall. Like you have this whole Dubai kunafa chocolate. Though I've not experimented with kunafa or pistachio yet, but that can be an idea for someone. Like you can make a cupcake in a that kunafa pistachio form, and that's how I do it. And some things that I feel like are not selling a lot on the menu for whatever reason, I tend to like remove them over time. Sometimes I just keep them, but many times I see, okay, this particular cookie no one buys at all, so I just like get it
so
off
you
the menu.
maintain an Excel sheet of what is getting sold and
Okay, so it started with me maintaining, started with an Excel. So that's why I was grateful for my job, because it taught
You
me
learned
formulas, it taught me shortcuts, which are very very helpful. So how I do it on Excel is like I have different tabs for different categories. So you have cakes. In that I've listed out all the cakes, like the recipes of everything that's going into like a 1 kg cake or a 500-gram cake. So if we have a chocolate cake on the recipe on the menu, I have everything written down. So I have a base sheet with all the raw materials. Chocolate is this much price, and I've calculated per gram of it. Okay, so chocolate, if I buy for 1,000 for 1 kg, so it's like 1 rupee per gram, like that. Flour, it's like 45 rupees per kg, so you calculate it per gram. So that's the base sheet. Then when you come into categories like cakes, chocolate cake, how much chocolate is it needed? For this recipe, you need 20 grams of chocolate. So I connect this 20 grams to the per gram that's calculated over there.
Correct.
So that I get an approximate costing of how much my 1 kg cake is coming to.
Right.
So the Excel is not only maintenance of my orders, it's also maintenance, it's how I derive my prices.
Correct.
Also for my things. I understand what the costing is. So everything. So flour is 300 grams. Okay, 300 grams will cost you 20 rupees. 20 grams of chocolate will cost you 20 rupees. Then oil goes, butter goes in, the whole thing. And I also include packaging in this, because when you're making a 1 kg cake, you're giving them a box, you're giving them that cake base. So that cost also goes into that. And let's say my 1 kg cake is coming up to 300 rupees.
This is all the raw material.
Raw
cost
material,
that
just
is
the
going.
direct raw material
Yeah.
cost. Like I'm not including my labor cost or my electricity cost and all of that, just the direct materials that are going in. And based on your own preference, I mean, it's not much to do with your preference, but you have to sort of set a profit margin. Like if 300 is the cost, how much more do you want to sell it for, so that you also have your very well paying yourself for your efforts, you're paying for any other extra expenses, and you have to keep a profit margin as well. In the food industry, it's usually like 3x, like you should maintain a profit margin of 60 to 70%.
And does this include the effort that you're putting in, or that comes separate?
That comes like separate. No, yeah, it's all in that. So for example, the cost is 300 rupees for a kg cake. Now I'm selling it for, let's say, 1,200 rupees. So you're getting your profits also out of that, and you're also including all your indirect costs.
Yeah.
Like
Your electricity,
electricity, my rent, like now I'm paying my full-time DD. There are a lot of costs that you don't even think that I might even be missing out on some things. But yeah, those are not like written down. It's not like, okay, 20 rupees is this, 20 rupees is that. That's just an approx that you do. So
and you keep updating it with the newer prices every time you restock your materials.
So the moment I get, so for example, this time I got chocolate for 1,200 instead of 1,000 rupees. The moment I change it in my main sheet 1,200, automatically, because it's connected to that.
Correct.
Okay. So then so I made categories on my Excel for cakes, cupcakes, tarts, everything. And we have a base sheet with all the raw material cost, all the packaging cost. Now packaging is also, we have so many boxes. We have different types of boxes. We have a different box for cupcakes, brownies, 4 number, 6 number, all of that is maintained. And for example, I'm writing down the cost of brownies. So I've divided, okay, the cost of 6 brownies will be this much plus the cost of the box. Cost of 4 brownies will be this much plus the cost of the 4 box brownies. That is one sheet, and one is our main sheet where I'm maintaining the orders of all the customers. Okay, today Nandini bought this from me, this is from me. Again, it's all connected. Like she got a 1 kg chocolate cake, so I connect this to the
main sheet
cost
again.
sheet. This is the cost, this is what I charged, if there's any customization, everything. So it gives me and then I also add the profit margin and everything. Again, it's visually I can see, okay, I have only made like, here I had a little bit of like a loss or whatever. Sometimes you have to return, like if a cake gets spoiled during transit, which is the worst horror story for any baker. So you return the money, you write it over there. But this was how I started off with. Now we use like an accounting software and a billing software called as Paid Puja, which is a very popular billing software in the food industry. So again, you have to sort of upload all your data, upload all the recipes, and it
becomes the same thing that you were doing in an Excel.
Yeah, but more automated way. Here I was not giving invoices to customers. It was not that important. If someone asked me, I always just went online and made an invoice. But with the proper billing software, you just have to write, okay, Nandini, you write the phone number, you write what all she has ordered, which is already in our database. So it automatically calculates the price and it sends you an invoice on your number. Again, that So as you keep growing, you realize that you need to have more records, more everything properly.
Right.
So something like a proper billing software, Paid Puja, which is, I think, really, it's a very, very good software. It's a one time, no, I think it's 10,000 for the whole year, which is not a bad figure at all. It's like a great budget software. And it's not necessary in the beginning at all. Like, I started off with Excel. Now with Excel also, it's all still pretty manual, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're still doing this, and for invoice, there's no system of invoices. So that's what we use now. We're still getting the hang of it. It's not fully functional, but yeah, it will be much easier.
Where do you source your packaging from, and how did you design the boxes that you wanted to put your bakes in?
So honestly, currently none of our packaging is custom made. There's no brand identity on it as well. It's not like the boxes or the paper bags are, have cake for breakfast printed on it. That's what I want to do in the future. See, there are so many things that you can do, but it's not necessary that you do it all at once in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. So right now I buy standard boxes and paper bags from Camp in Pune. There's a shop called as King's Paper. Now that's just where I go to. It has all the packaging supplies that you may need ever. They also keep getting Diwali related boxes. If it's Valentine's, they'll get like Valentine's related boxes. There are a ton of websites online as well, but online I always find it more expensive.
Yeah.
So this was one place that I found.
And these are
And
just plain white and
plain cardboard
brown
brown boxes, and some of them are also colored.
Hmm.
And I've never really stuck to one color. I buy whatever color they have available. So that's where I buy all my packaging from, whether it's the cupcakes, for cakes, for big cakes, tall cakes, like everything. And I think every city has like a good vendor or a good supplier for packaging, so that's where I get it from. But like in the future, I do want to get these, like, those stamps or something that you can do it yourself, like on a normal brown bag, you just like do that stamp for cake for breakfast. That's
So
what I
right now
want
you
to do.
put a little sticker of
Yeah,
sorts
right
on
now
it.
the branding that we do on everything that we send out, we tape it up. I put a little cake for breakfast sticker. Again, stickers are very easily, you can get it. There's so many places online doing it. There are a lot of pages on Instagram that do it. And also like these chains of shops like called Printo, that you go and they do flexes, they do business cards, everything. And I put my little sticker, and I stick the business card on the box as well. So that's the only brand identity that the packaging has currently. But otherwise, it's very standard.
And for delivering it, do you still run your business right around the community that you started in, and or now are you expanding across Pune?
No, so currently we deliver all over Pune. It of course started with Blue Ridge, and many customers are still from Blue Ridge or in and around, but we have definitely expanded. It's all over Pune. We are based in Hinjewadi, which is a little on the away from the city part. So all in and around areas like Wakad or Aund or Pimpri or Baner Balewadi side, mostly we do deliver there. And we also deliver like an hour away till like the city side, like your college or your Viman Nagar side. It just depends on item to item. If it's like cookies, brownies, it's safe to deliver. If it's big cakes and decorated cakes or cupcakes, so mostly we deliver via bikes like Dunzo and Porter. We currently do not have a budget to like hire someone on a personal driver or something like that. And since we are not on Zomato, Swiggy yet, we do not get that uh, perk of having a delivery boy coming and picking up. So the delivery charges are additional, and the customer bears it. The customer is informed well in advance, according to their location, what your delivery will be on a two-wheeler. And if it's a complicated cake, if it's a tiered cake, decorated cake, we give them an option of a cab, or you can pick up yourself. But cab is obviously much, much safer. I've never had any incidents that in a cab it hasn't reached well, however long the distance may be. I've had a couple of mishaps on bike deliveries, because when you book through the app, you might get some good drivers and some who really care, some who just don't care. Like for them, it's just another package and they move on with their life. So I've had a few cakes ruined in that process. So If it's like solvable, I tell them to get it back. I try to fix it and send it again. If it's fully spoiled, then I sort of try to give a refund or a. It also depends from customer to customer. Some customers are okay, like they're okay if it's spoiled a little bit, but it's still properly edible, and they enjoy it and they say, "Don't worry about it, it's okay." Some of them obviously do want a refund back, which is fair. So I try to, if not give a full refund, try to give a partial refund, because it's not that they're not aware of the risk beforehand. They are told, like, it can happen. It's not impossible, but from our end, we send it as properly packed as possible. Like if it's the cake, you stick the base to the box so that the cake doesn't move in the box. You really instruct the driver, please bhaiya aram se chalao, and you just then pray. That's all that you can do. So that's how we deliver. We are delivering all over Pune. See, slowly and steadily you will start seeing that if your product again is good, you have to maintain that level of quality. It's not like one day you give something good and one day it's not good. So people will know about you, your word of mouth, your Instagram is going on in the background, people are seeing your page, they've never ordered from you but they want to order from you because it looks nice. Someone might have had something in their office that someone might have got, so through word of mouth, luckily, yeah, we are delivering much more, not only in Blue Ridge now, which initially started off with like the society.
So now, how do you receive your orders? Is it through Instagram or WhatsApp or?
So three main uh, avenues where I get orders. One is obviously Instagram, through Instagram DM, through a request. I've also mentioned my phone. We have a business number, separate business number, mentioned on Instagram. Sometimes people, if they miss that, they message me on DM, and then I direct them to the phone number because it's much easier on WhatsApp. They get a whole menu. So it's one is through Instagram, one is through WhatsApp. Like if word of mouth, if someone has shared my number with somebody else, I post it on groups, I post it on my status, on my business number status. So through there. And third, and one of the most important, is we've made a Google profile on Google. So we have put a lot of pictures there. We consistently make an effort to get reviews from people, because the more reviews you get, the more Google will push your profile. So if you're searching bakeries near me, Cake for Breakfast will come up.
Oh,
Yeah, Cake for Breakfast will come up. If you're writing cakes near me, Cake for Breakfast will come up. So people will see a review. So we have about we have about 100 reviews, but all of them are very good, written reviews. So if a third person is ordering for the first time, they get a little bit of trust because they're reading those reviews, they're seeing pictures. So that is one of the biggest places where we get our brand new customers, like who are just looking for a cake. And through Google they are redirected to me, and they of course have the number and everything is there. So they contact me. So that's how we are getting our customers.
and what were the legal requirements that you had to fulfill when this became a full-fledged business?
Okay, so almost after 8 months, 7 to 8 months of me doing this full time, I decided to register my business, like legally make it a company. So we made it a private limited company. So one of the main reasons to register the company was firstly the FSSAI license, which is the quality check license in any food business. You need to have a company. Like the FSSAI license is given to a company. So that was one of the main reasons I wanted to register my company. Now I would obviously recommend that you get external help who will do all these formalities for you. It's not easy to navigate everything yourself, like to register the company, you have to put things on the portal, upload documents, there are a lot of things. So in my case, luckily one of my very close friends that I had made in office, his mother was like a company secretary. So she did have a legal team under her and they had a lot of clients. So she helped me out there. She got me in touch with one of their teams who, register businesses, do the GST, do the legalities and all of that. But you'll find such people online also, a lot of people like who provide everything, like who'll get your FSSAI license, who'll register your business. You obviously pay them some fees. Yeah, so we had this little team. One of them was a CA who we basically just, they asked us whatever, like send in these documents, send in your signatures, send in your PAN card, and basically they did everything. So to be very honest, I wouldn't be able to guide someone on how to do it themselves, because you can't do everything yourself in a business, especially when it's legalities. It's not just registering a business. There are so many things that keep coming with it, and you can't keep a record of it if you've never done it before. So when you have a team, you obviously have to pay them some like fees, because like some consulting fees, because they are doing that work for you. But then they'll send me a reminder that, hey, now we need to file our returns. You can't miss all these deadlines, especially when it's, you know, all these legal formalities. You can't miss out on a deadline. So you have these people always telling you, okay, this is, it's time to do that now, send in
So it's
this
not a
document.
one-time thing. It's a
It's an
continued,
ongoing thing.
yeah,
And when you
ongoing.
register yourself as a company, you know, you have to make those balance sheets, you have to make those. So it's not, obviously now our profit and loss statement or our balance sheet is not full-fledged like how you would actually think. But it has to be.
Correct.
Now that you've registered as a company, the government wants to see those documents, and however
So you have to put
present
up
it,
all your fridge, oven,
all of
everything
those
on that
things. So
in your
that
balance sheet.
they helped me with. They told me,
Oh.
send me a list of all the equipments that you have, so that, you know, we can try to get some benefit from it, like for you. All of that. So like we need to create your balance sheet now. So you send me, abhi hum excel pe sab kar rahe the, so I had at least all the records. Okay, in January month we made this much profit, this much sale. In February month we made this much sale, our sale increased or our sale decreased. So she has a record of everything. And with our equipment and everything, she can, they also do their own like jugaad. They know. It's not like we are not obviously a business at a very big scale. They understand that, but they know that they have also have to show all these documents. So they have their own way of doing it. So all you just need is, you need to supply your documents, your signatures, whatever. And yeah, I mean, it does feel like, oh my god, you're spending so much money when you're still at a smaller level. Like when we had just started, it did pinch me a little bit. Like, you know, we have to give them the fees, and to register your business you have to give about $8,000, and for something else you have to give 6,000 rupees. There are a lot of expenses, but in the long run, I know we have everything like sorted, everything's organized. We are showing our revenue, everything is like, so I think it's going to be easier for us in the longer run. Yes. So yeah, don't try to do everything yourself. It will feel daunting. It still feels daunting to me. Like when we registered for GST, I had a brief 1 week where some deadline was coming up, and I just didn't understand anything about it. Like, I mean, then I finally, like, the team that we have, like, who helps us now with all of this, they're very, very sweet. They sit down and they explain everything to me. But this one time where I was just not understanding anything, and I thought, oh my god, the deadline is approaching, and, you know, haven't done this. In my head, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I had like a breakdown for one whole day. I was like, oh my god, this is so hard. How do I do this? How do I do this? Then those people told me it's nothing to worry about. Like, I thought it has to be done in a certain way. But they said it does not have to be done in a certain way. It's okay. Like, you have your Excel, you have everything maintained. I thought they needed some other software where all this has to be uploaded and all. Anyway, so it is still daunting. I still don't understand A to Z everything of it, but that's why you have other people to help you. You have these little teams, you have these little businesses. A lot of businesses help you out with your FSSAI license, GST number, this, that. So you just need to trust them. And if you've decided it, to take that leap of registering your business, you have to know that obviously there will be some additional expenses that you might not have if you don't register your business. But getting an FSSAI license, I feel, is very important. It gives the assurance to a customer that, okay, this business has one. And you know, we can trust them with the quality. Now if tomorrow I want to go and list my products on Zomato, Swiggy, they will need FSSAI license, and by FSSAI license, it has to be done. So I felt like if it has to be done eventually, why not just do it from beforehand? So I don't regret that decision. It is still daunting. So take help. Take someone to always guide you. I ask them the most stupid questions. Like, they are such experienced CAs, and, you know, handling, I'm sure, such big accounts, and there I am asking, like, what does this mean? Like, what is this? But yeah, that's a part of the business. That's a part of you starting a business. Like, there's so many things that you've learned from scratch. So here's another thing that you have to learn. Yes.
Yeah, you like learn so many things, the business aspect,
Yeah.
the whole cooking aspect,
Making a
like,
website,
correct.
dealing with customers, dealing with bad reviews sometimes,
Yeah.
which still like shakes you up.
Yeah.
Even if you get 100 good reviews and there's one bad review,
Mm.
you think about it all the time. Like, at least with me, it happens. I
Mm.
feel like I think about it all the time. But again, you just keep telling yourself it's a part of the business. If everything was perfect, every second person would be doing it. Every
Yeah.
second person would be having a successful business.
Mm.
But doesn't work like that.
Mm.
Comes with its own setbacks, ups and downs, sometimes more downs than ups, but that's a part of it.
And how much have you grown over the years? Like, tell me, how many orders did you get in 2021 versus how many orders do you get now?
Okay, wait. So I would say month on month we grow like maybe by 10 to 20% in like revenue. And if I have to give a very like, now I feel like in the last 6-7 months I feel like we're adding on so many new customers to our, like, it's noticeable.
Yeah.
Like almost every day I would get like 2 new customers who I speak to who place an order, which is a big thing.
Yeah.
Like 2 brand new customers coming in. Earlier when I started off in the first 1 year, I think the initial months we might have done like 20 to 30. Like, you have serial numbers, like so many orders gone. It would be 30 to 35 in a month.
In a month.
In a month. Then it might have gone to 40, 45. Today we are almost every time we cross 150 orders.
Oh wow.
Which is really big.
Yeah.
And for a
It's 3
long
orders a
time
day.
I would call myself like just a home baker, or like we're just a home bakery. I used to think it's a small thing to be like, there are people having bakery shops and doing so many things. I would feel a little small in what I'm doing. But then again, I would tell myself like, I have just started out, I have learned everything by myself. And honestly, at this level, like, we are very saturated at the home bakery level, where we are quite saturated with how many orders we can do from home.
Correct.
So this is the maximum that we can do. Of course, there's scope for a little bit more, but I'm very proud of how much we are able to produce and how much we are able to cater to from a home base.
Yeah.
With the amount limited space, with the limited equipment that we have, I think we're really outdoing ourselves, and I'm really happy of where we are today. I can definitely see the growth of when we started, and how, like, that day the 18 Korean bun order that I got made me so happy. And today it's obviously not a big deal, but that's the thing, you keep growing, you keep but that excitement is still there every time I get a new order. That like never gets old. And I don't think it ever will. Like, it's still as like, okay, we got an order. Okay, my phone, we got an order. So we've definitely grown. Thankfully I got Anita Didi at the right time. I did procrastinate a bit. I'm like, okay, I'll get some help. You think you can manage everything? You can. But unless you grow your team, you're going to be at that level. You can't really expect to grow. You'll get one Didi, and then maybe in the future you'll get another Didi or whoever. And now I know that the Anita is equipped to teach and train someone else.
Correct.
So yes, the business has grown in terms of customers, in terms of numbers, in terms of the things that we can make, the quantity of the things that we can make. And like, I would never make tiered cakes before. There's growth in everything. Then I made my first 2-tiered cake. I was like, oh my god, I still get scared. Now I know I can make 4 to 5 kg tiered cake. So there's growth in your experience, your skills, your customers, your Instagram, what you can offer. People knowing that, okay, that they know that she can bake this. That's why they come to you with some special, detailed, difficult customizations. So yeah.
What was the most fun customization that you did for a cake?
Fun customization, I would say I made a couple of these very naughty bachelorette cakes that have like really made me, because I don't use fondant, so I have to really come up with alternatives of how we can show a lot of things. So those have been a little fun to make, and really challenging you of how you can replace the fondant and do something. So those would have been fun. And then recently did like an order where for a birthday not only made the cake, but we made like a lot of cupcakes and cookies with that same theme. So it was like an overall something.
And
But
you
it's
also did
very
a
exciting.
recent corporate order, right? Where you
Yes.
sent a huge batch of cupcakes.
Yeah, we made
to-
around 200 to 250 cupcakes with the custom logo of the company. It was for an event that they had. That was my first ever corporate order. And I want to get into more of those because those are bulk orders. So it's a great way of, you know, making more money in like a lesser amount of time. And yeah, that's what new things like corporate orders ho gaya, like for someone's wedding you've made something, you've done some party favors, you're like how much ever you put at a stall, like your stall experience for your customers has become better. Like from society, like a small little doing it on a table to doing it, you know, for bigger events, for doing it for college fests.
Yeah.
It's a lot
And
of things.
Urvi is also a huge like dog lover. So she makes
Yes.
she makes a lot of cakes for dogs as well, and then takes them to shelters to feed a lot of
Yes.
stray dogs at once.
Yes.
And I think you've always done that, like
Yeah.
ever since.
I love that I can through baking combine the passion that I have and the love I have for dogs, and you know, be able to create for dogs. So we make dog cakes, and I always tell the customers to share pictures with me, and it's just adorable to see that you made something and a dog is like going all
crazy
out
out of it, yeah.
devouring your cake. And it's always fun to and special that, you know, you can like merge this like passion. And my main goal has always been in the future to do something for the dogs. So I want, that's the main reason I want to make so much money, so that, you know, we can do something for the welfare of like the street dogs of India, and like hopefully give them a better life or a better.
But where do you see Cake for Breakfast in 5 years? Or what is the height that you want to take this to?
See, I think the ultimate goal for any baker is to obviously have my own bakery one day, have my own patisserie one day, but I don't want to rush into it. I know that's my end goal. I want to make it like a dream come to life. I have so many ideas in my head of how I want it to be, of how I want it to work. I want it to be more than just a cafe. A lot of things. So that is my ultimate goal. I am a person who sort of sets short-term goals and sees like how it's playing out, and you know, you modify your goals accordingly. But my next big thing is to move to a cloud kitchen, because as I said, the how home bakery situation is pretty saturated. Like, you know, I need to get more people now, like one more person in my team, and kitchen is just too small to have 3 people working in the same place at the same time. So move to a cloud kitchen. I will have to get bigger equipment. I will have to learn how to efficiently use that bigger equipment, how to, you know, now we're producing in our small oven and our small little stand mixer. To increase the scale, I will have to understand that, get used to that. To increase the scale, I have to get more people to work with me. I have to train them, basically build a team that will stick with me for many years to come, so that we can do something bigger later on. So basically the main thing is to increase my scale of production, so that we can do more of these corporate orders. Maybe we can get on Zomato and Swiggy. That will help us to, you know, be discovered by more customers. Again, to get on Zomato, Swiggy, I'm sure you guys know that they take so much money. They take a lot of commission. So for me to actually get something fruitful from that, I need to increase my scale. So if I'm producing more, if I'm selling more, I'm sure I can cover those commissions and everything that's going on, and have a team, you know, have a team, so that I can get to focus on more things and run things on autopilot. Like right now I still have to be there. It's still very hard for me to delegate things, but to grow you have to delegate, and you know, so that's the next big thing. And basically bakery is much later. Like I want to be fully ready for it. Like, you know, now when I know how to manage a team, I know how to manage these big bakery spaces of cloud kitchen, then I know that it will be much easier for me to open a bakery. And opening a bakery it's like a pretty big investment, and I just don't feel ready for it immediately. And when I do, yes. But yeah, the next plan is to just be able to produce more, bake more, teach more people, and have like a whole ecosystem of baking going on.
Damn, bro. Proud of you. Cheers.
Cheers. If you're in Pune,
You have to order
order
this, guys.
from
Order
Cake
this
for
right
Breakfast.
now. This is just too good.
If you guys have any other questions, anything that you
Oh, yeah.
still want to ask
I'll
me,
link down Urvi's Instagram and her phone number below.
yes.
So please do reach out to her and order these amazing cakes. And even for your dogs.
Yes. Bye.